Welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be covering some questions and answers on here. So if you want to put in the comments below any questions you have regarding OCD, I will cover those now. I'll be on here for a little bit covering all of those. If you've not already joined the Facebook group, please do so. It's a great free resource where you can ask anything about OCD. There's lots of people in there that have got good knowledge of OCD. There's various moderators in there that have a good experience of having worked with me and understanding about the OCD recovery journey in relation to unconditional self-life and other acceptance, changing our relationship with OCD, and everything else that comes along with the journey, because it's made up of quite a few components as well as sort of a thorough understanding of OCD. You don't need to know everything, but it helps to know a fair bit. So yeah, let's get started with some of these. Hello, please tell me I can't study because I feel it's not real, always come in questions. If you could just rephrase that, I don't specifically understand that question. How far do you have to go with exposures? You have to take it to where it's within safe boundaries, of course, but you've got to get into the core of the fear. So you're going to have to adjust that to get under what you're scared of. How do I know my thoughts are OCD? You can't have certainty. For example, I could think of anything right now, like what if an alien has abducted me? Well, I think it's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen, but I can't guarantee with absolute certainty that it's not going to happen. Like Voltaire said, certainty is absurd. You can't get it. You won't be able to ever achieve absolute certainty. It doesn't exist. But we chase it because we think we need that to bring relief, but we actually don't need that to bring relief. That's not what's needed. It's just we tend to think that is what's needed because we've often chased with reassurance in the past and got relief. So we imagine that it's a case of just getting more and more certainty to get relief until we get into a position where we can't get any more certainty. It's not possible. We're in a position where we can achieve any more certainty because OCD will just keep moving the goalpost. If you've got fear of HIV, for example, you'll get your HIV test results back and it will say, what if you were an exception? What if this doctor got it wrong? What if the samples, the blood test was mixed up at the hospital? What if you are a rare case that's undetected? What if you contracted it outside of the window? It's going to keep moving all the time. I know that very well myself, having been in that position when I was young, between 17 and 20, where it was constantly latching to that fear and moving all the time. And that was very tricky because I had no idea it was OCD at the time. So I was constantly going from one STD test clinic to another, checking to try and get certainty, until I got to a point where eventually I realized this is not achievable. And then I then learnt about learning to accept HIV and making peace with it, where then I got to a position where even if I had HIV, I wouldn't like it, but I realized I could still live a long life. It'd be frustrating at times, but it wouldn't stop me from living the life I want to live. There would be symptoms, maybe some physical symptoms and other problems in my life in relation to having HIV, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. There's far worse things to have. So once I made peace with that and accepted, I could, make peace with that scenario. It would be uncomfortable. It wouldn't be ideal. Then I was no longer frantically chasing relief from one place to the next. Okay. Can OCD come and go on and off in life? Yes, it can have moments where it can go down for a long period of time, then raise its head up again at another time. From about the age of, I'm trying to give you some sort of picture of my own life, from the age of about 17 to 25, I used to own a gym. And when I did that, there was periods where I'd got better from a certain thought or whatever, and then got like 2 to 3 years of pretty good, not being in much trouble, and then bang, at 24 it came in hard, and then I thought, God, I'm back at square one completely. Something that we often talk about, how OCD goes in phases like that. There's no specific age that it has to stick to. People come to me where it suddenly got bad at 60 or suddenly got bad at 30. Can occur at any time. But once you get under it in the ways we're discussing here in relation to recovery, however it raises its head at whatever time makes no difference. So that's a really important thing. And a large part of what I'm doing with my job is raising awareness to being more comfortable with anxiety at any point. People often come to me who say, I've been good for years and I've just sold my company, for example, and I planned on retiring, somebody older, and suddenly OCD has raised its head at that time. And they've fiercely resisted it because they remember the turmoil they were in the past when they were younger with OCD. So they get scared and think, oh my God, I hope I don't get back like that. And that's a sort of fear cycle that's going on there as well. Or maybe a mother who's just having a baby and had OCD first in their early 20s, suddenly caught off guard with it. Oh my God, my life's going downhill again. I'm not going to be able to raise my daughter, And so it can raise its head at different times. So it's about learning to welcome it in at any time or age. It's not uncommon to see people coming in their 70s with OCD relating to health, as they've now got to an age where the risk of dying is higher. So they're starting to view every symptom which they imagined was rarely a cause for concern now is. So they're very scared of that. So any age, any time, any position, it can raise its head. Between the 20 to 24, when I was running my gym, I was able to function very well. But then at about 24, when it came in really hard, I found it more difficult. I still managed to do it, but it wasn't easy. So it can change in types of physical sensations, in types of suffering experience, the whole mixture. But the road to recovery gets under it regardless of whichever way it's coming on. Can you recover from OCD without medication? Absolutely yes. So they're designed to take the edge off, but they are not a cure. How can I deal with the urge to throw things and pull hair due to OCD? Well, that's got a lot to do with learning to get comfortable with the sensations and look at what the fears are in relation to those. So we'd have to look at that in more detail, how that applied specifically to you. I'm having derealization. Derealization again tends to be, it's an anxiety symptom, and it's related to you've got to get comfortable with the derealized state. Not trying to get rid of that state, wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. If you feel derealized, it's not the end of the world. I used to think, God, I was going crazy. What if I was developing schizophrenia or something like that? But it wasn't. It was just an anxiety symptom that I was feeling. It wasn't the end of the world having that experience. But with a lot of those ones, it took me to becoming more accepting of other illnesses, paranoia, delusions, psychosis, schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder. Only when I became more accepting of those did the fear of crazy come down. Because crazy, right, isn't just a made-up word us humans use to describe something we do not understand that mimics a sort of out-of-control mental sensation. Whereas in reality, that can only be put into categories of certain mental health conditions. So we can work with direct exposures for those, which gets into that whole fear. But there's other elements around that it gets in at. What that could mean for your position in society, what that could mean for your job or your family and friends, and how they look at you, and so on and so on. So a few little areas where it can latch into. Should you look at real event thoughts the same with unconditional self-acceptance? Absolutely. Unconditional self-acceptance was key for me getting over my real event false memory harm OCD in the past from around the age of 12, 13, 14 events, and looking at that and latching. And so it was only when I got under that with the unconditional self-acceptance that I was able to internally relax, because for so long I was constantly on guard. Is this something of serious concern that I cannot let go? I must keep my eyes on it like a hawk at all times. How to overcome reassurance. Overcoming reassurance is about having a real sort of firm word with yourself, but compassionate too, that it's not getting you anywhere, and the only reason you've been stuck for so long is because you've been keeping the reassurance cycle going. It's like a drug. It's like a drug to certainty, wanting an absolute certainty to satisfy your peace requirement you believe is going to bring about peace. That's what you think, but it doesn't. It's just an idea that you concocted. So giving that up like it's a drug, viewing the OCD recovery road the same as if you went into a rehab for getting off certainty. What do you make of cancel culture being a trigger for people with OCD? Well, of course, it's very black and white thinking and rigid, so it's obviously going to make people anxious. So we can apply the acceptance in there the same way and have a look at how that relates to what you're scared about. Probably being rejected by everyone, friends and family, or the end of a career or whatever, something like that is in there. I'm a medical student and now feel it doesn't exist. Imagine it's trying to attack your being a medical student because you value that very much. So it's got an existential concept there, which we would need to look at. But it's all to do with trying to take you away from your goal. Frustration in relation to fears, courage in relation to exposures. It's about sort of white knuckling it and biting it and going for it because it's the only option. You've got to scale it up a bit so that it becomes more easy to do, but there will be leaps you'll have to take with exposures at certain times. I'm terrified, Rob. Mine stem back from 13 years ago. False memories harm my OCD. I feel like confessing what I feel. Confessing will never bring relief. People come into me that want to hand themselves into the police. People come into me with handcuffs on that feel that if they didn't, they would commit a vicious crime. Every single scenario you can imagine, I see. Confession does not work. It's not the answer. You're not going to find relief there. The more you search for certainty, the less confident you feel. Absolutely. How to ignore the thoughts and not believe. You're not going to be able to ignore them. You have to go with this process that we're discussing here. Ignoring is not the answer. You may be able to view them just as thoughts, and you certainly will later on in the journey as you become more accepting. But for now, you're definitely not going to just be able to ignore them. You have to bring them along for the ride, but you're not going to be able to block them. If you try and block them, that's when you're going to get stuck, because they're going to raise up. They don't like not being invited to the party. They turn up the heat if they're not. In relation to that one, in relation to everything being unreal, check out my existential video on the YouTube channel that covers solipsism, which is what that probably relates to. When I think about physical symptoms, I start having them. Absolutely, because the reason that is the case is because your anxiety is all connected through your nervous system. So if you have a terrified fear of feeling sensations in your hand, you're going to feel sensations in your hand. How to rectify the damage made as a result of a bad therapist. Well, in reality, there's no damage ever made by a bad therapist. What it is beliefs that they will have, sort of irrational beliefs or wrong ideas that they've given you. So all that's happening is you're holding those beliefs or so on, and you just need to change them. Even if you had a therapist, which is commonly seen, where they've reassured you for years, that doesn't mean you can't stop reassurance. You can stop reassurance at any point. And so it was just learning that. And any irrational beliefs that they've sort of reinforced, you can learn to dispute those till you adopt the rational alternatives. So there's no permanent damage ever done. I feel the need to knock on wood, otherwise something bad will happen. Knocking on wood is a compulsion. It's a very common compulsion that humans have who don't have OCD. So you've got to get used to not knocking on wood and taking the risk of whatever will happen. How do we work out about acceptance and disputing irrational beliefs without being obsessed about them? Do them little by little. It's a balance. Don't use it like trying to dispute away the thought. You just do it in little sections, say for 15-20 minutes a day or every other day, not trying to use it when you're triggered and trying to really battle it away, because that does the opposite and makes you more anxious. I really can't study. I feel like it doesn't exist. You can study, you've just got to do it with the sensation of it not existing being there as well. Fear of being young, cancer, great exposure work with YouTube. For example, if you look at that video on my Instagram stories by Pee Wee Tom, you'll be able to see his page before he died of cancer. That's a great exposure you want to build up to, but it's getting into the irrational beliefs around dying, coming to terms with the fact that we are dying at some point in the not so distant future, all of us. So even if we die sooner, it's not something that's not going to happen to us regardless. But we need to have a look at that in more detail. Dying has various components that are causing people to be scared of it. We just need to look at those and see what ones are causing you to be chronically anxious at this point. Have a thought that I've cheated? If you check out my ROCD video, and also in the Facebook groups, this is regularly covered on a daily basis. It's one of the most common OCD concerns. I can't move on from the past yet. You can move on from the past, but the reason you can't is because of the acceptance element. So once that you have a good understanding of that, you will be able to let go of that, the same as I did in relation to the past. So that is where the unconditional self-acceptance will come in, and life acceptance and so on. It's because you feel like you can't let yourself ever off the hook, and you can never accept yourself and be at peace if you were to do X, Y, Z. So that's what we need to look at. Gastric pain in relation to stomachs. I think I've covered that on the YouTube channel in a physical symptoms video. I had a huge amount of gastric related problems, including LPR, GERD, esophagitis, mixtures, gastritis, all different things. The nervous system is very in tune in the stomach, because it has to tell us when we're hungry and has to tell us when when we're full, as opposed to the bicep. It doesn't need to have the same nervous reaction, because we don't need to know to contract a bicep as often as we do in relation to the stomach. So the stomach is more sensitive, so hence when you've got an anxiety disorder, the stomach will flare up and cause sensations and problems in that manner. So if you have a look at that video, I think that will cover that. Again, in the Facebook group, you can cover those kind of questions, but it's all related to bringing your anxiety down. As you bring your anxiety down, the physical symptoms will follow. Often anxiety will keep the physical symptoms flowing, that they won't cut off with the meds for that particular area. I found that even with proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, Lanzaprol, all of that stuff, it didn't cut off the GERD fully, because the anxiety was always firing it up. My stomach was like pumping like a heartbeat in there, and that's what it was doing. So only when I got the anxiety covered did that reduce. Can you get over OCD without medication? Absolutely. Do I take medication? No. I never took medication. What I often say about medication is probably about, I would say, 40-50% of people with OCD tend to take medication. It's a personal choice. There's nothing wrong with it. If it helps take the edge off, by all means, yes. If the side effects you feel are too much trouble and you'd rather go it alone, that's fine too. It's there. There's no stigma relating to it. I didn't take it. I could have probably made my own journey easier at times had I taken it. It doesn't mean that you whichever route you take is fine, and you don't try and brave it and think, oh, I'm never going to take medication, which is kind of what I did, because that's not always the best option. Best option is whatever option makes you have makes your journey more easy, but at the same time bearing in mind that don't view it as a miracle cure, so something you're just going to dive on, it's going to solve all your problems. It's a decision you have to weigh up. It will help take the edge off, but it will not cure. Some people, the results are fantastic, some people not so good, but there's no stigma on it. That's what we were wanting to raise awareness on all the time. Is a key thing there, because far too much stigma around mental health meds. Right. I think I will cover the rest of the questions on the next Instagram Live. Thanks for tuning in and watching this today, guys. I'll be up in the next few days, I think, trying to get back on here more and more. I will see you guys then, and any other questions you have, please shoot them over to the Facebook group, and we try and get those covered every day. Thanks a lot, and I will see you on the next live. See you guys.